Did you ever wonder how the streets of Bradford got their name? I'm standing on Mill Street, the Mill Street Bridge to be exact, and if you guessed it was named after a grist mill, you'd be right. But there's more to the story than that. It involves newspaper editorials, city council meetings, a lawsuit, a dam, and a man who claimed he owned all the water that flowed over the dam and tried to build a city for it. Welcome to Coffee with the Curator. Working at the Bradford Landmark Society, we have the rare opportunity to learn all sorts of interesting stories that the public never knows about. Tragic, funny, and just plain unbelievable stories. And this one about the Douglas Dam, which was on Mill Street, is one of those unbelievable stories. Those kind of stories we often shake our heads and go, can you believe it? Well, this is one of them. It all starts with this man, William Fisher. Born in New Hampshire in 1810, his family moved to Pennsylvania when he was a child. In 1861, he established a grist mill on the banks of the Tuna at what would become Mill Street, and for the next 25 years, he custom ground wheat for flour. For years, it was the only mill in the Tuna Valley. The mill was run by water, so naturally, he built a dam across the Tuna. You might wonder how big that dam was. Well, in those days, the Tuna Creek ran deep but was relatively narrow. Here's a postcard from those days showing the width of the creek. Remember, flood control in the late 1950s and 1960s widened the creek as well as straightening it out in several places. The Tuna Creek of today looks almost nothing like it did when Fisher built his grist mill and dam. William Fisher was an early pioneer in the Tuna Valley area and had several businesses, not just the grist mill, but also a sawmill. This is his home, which still stands on East Main Street. Today it's a bed and breakfast called the Fisher Inn. William and his wife had 10 children, but only 5 survived to adulthood, all girls. The Tuna Creek flows north, towards the Allegheny River, and naturally, it would flow over the Fisher Dam. But each spring, when the floodwaters came, people in Bradford became convinced that what was causing the flood was the dam itself, actually holding the water so that it would back up into Main Street and the low-lying areas and flood the town. By the early 1880s, everyone wanted the dam removed. City Council began to put pressure on William Fisher to remove it. As litigation loomed, William Fisher, then 75 years old, sold the grist mill and the dam to a man named Charles Douglas. Douglas paid $2,500 for the grist mill and the dam. Here's an interesting picture of the Fisher Dam. That hill in the background is Oak Hill Cemetery, and you can see the tombstones on the hillside. Those 2 men on the dam, they're just faking it. Here's a map of the grist mill from 1890. In 1896, the Bradford Post wrote, "The Douglas Mill is the only one in Bradford that does custom work. The mill grinds about 9 tons of meal daily, with water as the source of power. The mills are 30 by 100 feet in dimension and 30 feet high and are of steel. The machinery is of the latest and most modern, and the work done is of the highest quality." It wasn't just high water that people were afraid of, but these ice floods, which often occurred in the spring. The Douglas Dam was blamed for these as well. Since the Douglas Dam was the only dam that had ever been across Tuna Creek, people naturally assumed that it was responsible for these kind of floods. The newspapers were full of angry editorials asking for the dam to be removed. But Charles Douglas, owner of the grist mill and the dam, refused to consider its removal. He said he needed it to run the grist mill, and it was his business that would suffer. And besides, he told City Council, he owned all the water that flowed over the dam. He did offer to sell the rights to the water, though, to the city, and suggested $30,000. The city, as you can imagine, were horrified at this cost. Douglas also refused to accept a boiler and engine and all necessary connections to run the mill with steam, the city to furnish the gas to run it free. He said he had no use for the mill without the water. If the city wants the dam removed, Mr. Douglas said, he must have his price. No known photographs exist of Charles L. Douglas, but he is described in the Bradford era as a man with an iron will, a steel determination to get what he believed was the correct price for the dam or no sale at all. Newspapers called him Douglas the Bold, and in some cases they described a wooden dam and an iron man. Douglas would get his price. By 1903, certain Bradfordians, prominent men, were getting tired of the whole Douglas Dam fiasco. They wanted the dam gone, and that was it. Senator Myron Matson, from Bradford, introduced a bill in Harrisburg in March of 1903, claiming eminent domain. They would seize the dam and tear it down, and Douglas could do nothing about it. It went to the Supreme Court. Finally, it landed on the desk of the governor, Samuel Pennypacker. And this is what Pennypacker said. The people of McKean County have heard a great deal during the past few weeks of Senator Matson's eminent domain bill, which was railroaded through the Senate and the House at Harrisburg during the closing hours of the late session of the legislature, solely for the purpose of ripping out Charles L. Douglas's mill dam in the city of Bradford. Mr. Matson has staked his reputation as a statesman on his ability to pass this piece of special legislation. This bill, if it became a law, would grant to the cities a most dangerous power. The power is given to remove not an obstruction within the limits of the municipality, but an obstruction upon any stream of water which flows near the corporate limits. Now, coincidentally, or ironically perhaps, Samuel Pennypacker's great-grandfather also ran a grist mill in Montgomery County. One wonders, did the plight of a grist mill owner, like his great-grandfather, sway his opinion? In either case, it didn't matter. The bill was thrown out, and the only solution for the city of Bradford was to pay Douglas's price, $15,000. And finally, in January of 1907, after over 20 years of litigation between Charles Douglas and the city of Bradford and various lawyers, the dam was destroyed. The Era wrote, "The Douglas Dam was given a rude shaking up yesterday when Robert S. Pringle, the high explosive expert, placed 76 pounds of dynamite under the famous obstruction and blew a hole in it 33 feet across. The job was done under the supervision of Superintendent Hefner, and the shot was so effective that a clear channel resulted. Through the opening, the waters of the Tuna now flow freely and will continue to do so in all the years to come." Today, of course, there are no remnants at all of the grist mill or the Douglas Dam left on Mill Street. The water flows freely under the Mill Street Bridge, and to my knowledge, that bridge has never once been blamed for the spring floods that might happen in Bradford.